Hello, class. In today's lecture, we're going to talk about management thought throughout the 20th century. So as you'll see, from the early 1900s through to the turn of the century and even today, we took different perspectives when we were talking about people and our employees within our organizations. So what we're going to do today is we're going to look at those different perspectives through the years. And it's important today because even though we may not still adhere to some of those principles that were developed a long time ago, it's important to realize where the conversation, where the dialogue has gone over the years and how we got to the perspectives that we're at today, but also how we still tend to borrow some of the ideas, some of the thoughts from those early theories, but maybe just apply them in a little different way. So in the last lecture, we talked a little about Robert Owens and how he took a little bit of a different perspective on human resources and on employees within the organization, because he looked at it more like managing people. How do I manage people, as opposed to this human tool concept where I just use them until they're no longer of use and then get rid of them. The first really widely studied management theory or perspective, though, was scientific management. And this was developed or first kind of brought about by a gentleman named Frederick Taylor. And Frederick Taylor was highly concerned about doing something the most efficient way. So any inefficiencies within a job would hopefully be eliminated. So Frederick Taylor initiated what he called time motion studies. And he would give an employee a job to do, time them, and then figure out the best, most efficient way something can be done. So whether it was unloading a rail car or shoveling into a furnace, whatever the most efficient way was in terms of body positioning, tools being used, everything was studied, and a one best way was developed. So you can see how this is a little bit, well, more than a little bit different than Owen's view. According to Frederick Taylor, everything could kind of be done in the most efficient way possible, and it really does kind of take the human element again out of the human resources, if you will. So employees didn't necessarily love this idea of being timed and studied. However, some good did come about it. For example, some employees worked on incentives, and if their output increased, they would get more money. So as they become more and more efficient through Taylor's techniques, they were able to get a little bit of a higher wage. The other thing, too, was Taylor really focused on the tools that the employees were using. So a lot of times employees, and I think in the early 19th century, didn't have the tools they needed to complete the job. He made sure that all the employees had access to the tools they needed in order to do their job effectively. So, again, this is really the start of studying management theory, and it took a very kind of mechanical look at the employee as opposed to what Owens was espousing earlier. The next movement was the human relations movement, and this was kind of highlighted by the Hawthorne studies. And the Hawthorne studies, you may remember from maybe your Principles of Management class, was a study in it was a factory setting. It was an assembly type setting where people would sit in long rows of tables and just assemble parts. And obviously there was lighting within these vast rooms. And the management at the time, or the people who were even studying this, were asking the employees, how should we change the lighting to make it more comfortable for you, to make it a little easier to work? We can make it brighter, we can make it less bright, we can change some of the light bulbs, we can do whatever you need to make it better. And the employees gave their suggestions. The interesting thing is, though, the researchers in this case didn't make any changes to the light. They asked the employees what they would like, but they never made any changes to the lighting. But what they noticed was there was a significant increase in output. And what they concluded from the study was that if we include the employees, if we seem like we care about the employees, if we're asking input from the employees, they're going to increase their performance. So this human relations movement came about because we started to look, and researchers started to look and say, okay, up until this point, we haven't really taken the employee into consideration. Now we are, and as a result, we're getting increased output. We're getting increased performance. We may even be getting maybe more job satisfaction. So that was a very important movement. Thinking about the systems movement or systems thinking, and this was probably sometime around the 70s and 80s. And again, this was an answer to the human relations movement I look at this, a lot of these things like pendulums. We had Robert Owens who was concerned, then we had Fred Taylor, and we kind of went back the other way. We had the human relations movement where we were really concerned about employees. And now we have swinging back to systems thinking, which was much more, we were much more concerned about the statistics. We were much more concerned about the processes. This is where you start seeing things like continual improvement, and you start seeing things like management by objectives and management by walking around, where we're almost micromanaging to an extent. We're out there, we're on the floor, we're developing goals in conjunction with the employees and really making sure they're following up on those goals and really staying on top of the employees the whole time. That was the whole systems thinking approach. And again, then the pendulum came back a little bit, and we were talking about the organizational cultural movement, which is certainly more recent, maybe the 90s going into 2000. And this is where we really started to look at the values and the norms of our employees. Again, in order to maybe improve job satisfaction, improve performance within our organization. Again, an even more recent one is the human resource management movement, or HRM. And part of that, a big part of that movement was the resource-based view of the firm. And I think this was Smith and Barney who had wrote this. And in essence, what it says is a company gets its competitive advantage by the resources that it employs. And if I could have resources that are better than what the competition is, then I should have a distinct competitive advantage, and hopefully a sustainable competitive advantage. And you can see a big part of that would be human resources, right? So if my human resources are more skilled, if they're smarter, if they're more knowledgeable than the competition, then and if I can retain them, then I am going to have a sustainable competitive advantage over time. So that was the resource-based view of the firm, and a lot of the talk within that perspective kind of boiled down to human resources. How do we attract? How do we train? How do we maintain the best people so our competition doesn't get them? Today we're looking a lot at the what we would call capital, and it's the things that you have acquired, that your experiences, your skills, your knowledge, and there's such things called human capital and social capital. And human capital is, again, what I know, those skills that I have, the knowledge that I have, the education that I have. And the social capital is who I know, how I'm able to interact with other people. So we're really kind of even looking deeper at the human resources within our organization, saying what type of capital is it that our employees have. There's even something newer that I'm very familiar with, is psychological capital. What are the psychological and cognitive processes that are employed in people that are going to make them good employees? So today, again, that's where the conversation is, kind of in the human, social, psychological capital arena. But in summary here, you can see how the thoughts have changed throughout the years, throughout the centuries. Kind of a pendulum swing from a mechanical, human tool perspective to more of the values and the norms of the employees. And I think we're kind of in a pretty good area now, where we're really focused on, and we should be really focused on how to really improve employee satisfaction, how to intrinsically motivate employees, because that's where we're going to get the best performance.